Hi there, this is Mr. Nolan, and I want to talk to you about something that we discussed in class today. It's an analogy, and the analogy is for digestion and biosynthesis. An analogy is like a metaphor, and so what we want to be able to do today is to be able to say, how is this scenario or this story that I'm going to tell you, how does this have to do with digestion and biosynthesis? It's really, on the surface, it's about Legos, but how is it like about digestion and biosynthesis? So let's go over here and look at this. Our goal is to be able to use this analogy to explain the roles and purposes of digestion and biosynthesis in an organism such as fungi. So here's this scenario. I'm going to go ahead and read this. You can skip this part if you want, if you've already heard it, or if you want to read it on your own. But I'm going to go ahead and read it. And so we're going to talk about how does this have to do with digestion and biosynthesis. So Akemene is playing with his friend Esiloza. He built a toy car out of Legos. Akemene thinks the car is really cool and wants to play with it. He used some triangular pieces for the hood and spoiler and a flat rectangular piece for the chassis. He also added a cool clear piece for the windshield, and it's a masterpiece. Esiloza is building her own car. She likes it and she wants it to be even bigger and better. She likes Akemene's car too, but she only likes it because it has Lego pieces she wants in order to build her own car. When Akemene gets up to get a snack, Esiloza sneaks over and pulls some pieces off his car. She steals the spoiler and the chassis and takes the clear windshield piece for good measure. Now her car looks even better than before. Akemene's car looks pretty miserable after Esiloza steals his pieces. In fact, it's not even a car anymore. Akemene returns and is very upset that Esiloza has destroyed his car in order to improve her own. How selfish of her. In the future, he takes steps to avoid being tricked by her again. So how is this like digestion and biosynthesis? That's what we want to be able to say. How is it like digestion and biosynthesis? Well, what we have here, we've got Akemene, and he has built this car. So we've got Akemene's car, right there. And then over here, Esiloza is building her own car. So we've got Essie's car. So she's working on her car, and she's got sort of a good start on it. There we go. So Essie's got her car coming together, and she steals some of Akemene's pieces. So she takes some pieces of his, some of the blocks, pieces of Legos, and she actually takes them, steals them, and puts them into her car. Right? So she's grabbing some of his pieces, and she's adding those to her car. So this is what the story explained, is what's going on. Now she's got this brand new fancy car. Akemene is upset. So how does this have to do with digestion and biosynthesis? Well, let's think about the processes involved in digestion and in biosynthesis and get a sense for, how is this like that? Well, Akemene's car is made out of many pieces. It's a large, object made of many pieces. So Akemene's car is kind of like a polymer. So it's kind of like a food molecule, such as starch or fat or a protein. And actually, Essie's car kind of is too, but we'll get there in a second. These little pieces that Essie is breaking off of his car are more like monomers. So these are really more like monomers. So we've broken our polymers down into monomers. And that process right there, breaking those pieces off of our polymers and making monomers, that is digestion. That's actually what we mean when we say digestion. We're breaking polymers down into monomers. So that's our two terms right away, polymers and monomers, and then digestion is going on. So as Essie is taking his pieces over to her car, this way, that would be absorption. She's taking those pieces into her car, toward her play space. And so that would be kind of like the cell of a fungus absorbing nutrients over into the cell. So it's broken down the polymers into little pieces, monomers, and it is absorbing them. It's bringing them across over into the cell. And Essie is adding some of those pieces, right, somewhere. She added the spoiler and she added a part of the chassis. So she's adding these pieces to her car. So in adding those pieces to her car, that is really the process of biosynthesis. So really, when you think about it, her car is another example of a polymer. Because she's building a large piece out of the smaller pieces that she stole from Achaemenes' car. So what we really have is we have polymers going to monomers being digested, and then the monomers are built back into polymers, and that process is biosynthesis. And of course we have absorption, which is when those monomers are actually sucked into the cell. So if we were to try to connect this to a real-world example, that's kind of like looking at something like this. So we have some food lying around, and this food contains a lot of polymers. Now for something like a fungus or some other decomposer, this polymer doesn't look like food to us. It looks like garbage or trash to us. But in the case of fungi, that's what they typically eat mostly. They decompose the dead and rotting animals and plants and other fungi that have died. And there's still lots of chemical energy in the molecules in their bodies. So even though we have this banana peel, we have some pieces of what looks like a leek or an onion, we've got some eggshells, we've got some carrot peelings, we've got an apple, we've got all this kind of stuff that's yucky to us, but it's food for a decomposer. So we've got all these polymers over here, and our decomposer, such as this fungus, is going to squirt those digestive juices. And those contain things like enzymes that are going to break down these molecules. So these digestive juices break those polymers down into monomers. So those polymers are broken down into monomers by those digestive juices. And now our monomers, so now that has digested, right? That's digestion. So that's kind of like Essie breaking the pieces off of Achaemenes' car. And now we have those monomers getting absorbed. So that's absorption into the fungus. They're getting sucked up into that decomposer, into those cells. And now that the monomers are here inside our decomposer, that decomposer is free to build them into larger molecules like proteins and fats and starches. And so that process of being able to do that would be biosynthesis. So that would be kind of like Essie building a bigger, better car from the particles that she stole from Achaemenes. So really when we, that's what this analogy this is how this is sort of like a decomposer, is that over here we have Achaemenes' car, it's the polymer, which is being broken down by Essie into monomers, little pieces of Legos. Those are getting taken over to her car in absorption, and then she can build those into bigger pieces, that biosynthesis. So we can build more polymers over here inside of our decomposer. So that's how this analogy is, supposed to look. That's sort of how it works. Is when we look up here, we really actually have a very similar situation to what's going on in the real world. Here we've got a car which is broken down, made into pieces, and then built into another car, somebody else's car. But here we have our food, which is being broken down to monomers and then made into polymers inside of our decomposer. So that's how our analogy sort of is meant to sort of compare these two things. So I hope that that's illuminating, and that's you can use that to help make a little bit of sense out of how in the world do Legos have to do with digestion and biosynthesis.